Psychology in India has sometimes been so anxious to be taken seriously as a science that it forgot to be human first. Because
In India, a person in distress is far more likely to visit a temple or an astrologer or a family elder than a psychologist. What does that tell us about where psychology has failed to root itself?
isn't written for the streets. We are all improvising here.
Theories are built on research samples that are often weird. Weird in the sense they are Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. As an Indian practitioner, as well as a very young practitioner, how often are you essentially translating a foreign map into a local terrain? Like a theory that works amazing in certain part of Connecticut will not work well in West Bengal, India, right? So, how do you culturally sensitize your practice?
Constantly, if you ask me. I mean, like almost every session that involves some form of quiet translation. Okay, so I'll give you an example, like a basic CBT model, like what it teaches us that we have to identify a thought, we need to challenge it and replace it with something more rational, right?
Yes.
But that assumes that a person sees their thoughts as their own, separate from the duty, from the family expectation, or community identity. Like, if you ask me, a 24-year-old staying in Guwahati, whose parents have arranged a marriage and whose thought is maybe I don't want this. See, the framework is not wrong exactly, but it's just speaking from a different dialect than the life in front of you. So the
Absolutely.
map which always has been provided to us is not useless. But we just have to know when the terrain does not match it. And you have to know, and you also have to be honest enough to say that the textbook wasn't written for the streets. We are all improvising here. Because whatever modules we have got from the Western or from different modules or different outlooks, those are not useless. But we just have to know where to use it and when that terrain does not match it,
Hmm.
so that we are honest enough to use it in a way which is going to benefit our culture or people from our culture and community as well.
Great. That was a solid example to support your answer, actually. Um, that would take me to my next question again. Okay. In India, a person in distress is far more likely to visit a temple or an astrologer or a family elder than a psychologist. What does that tell us about where psychology has failed to root itself culturally? And what do you do in your awareness practice to curb this?
It tells us that psychology arrived in India as a discipline before it arrived as a relationship. I mean, if it makes sense, I mean, it came through English medium textbooks, institutions, imported textbooks, urban clinics, and all. But that villager and I think you said about village leader, I guess, yeah. So those elders, they offer something psychology has been slow to offer.
Hmm.
They meet you in your own language, your cosmology, your framework of meaning. So they don't ask you to step outside of your world to get help. They just come into it. And I would say that's not superstition as well, because that's belonging.
Hmm.
Psychology in India has sometimes been so anxious to be taken seriously as a science that it forgot to be human. Because you say the healer who sits with you on the floor and speaks your dialect will always have an advantage over the one who asks you to complete a generalized anxiety form, disorder form, or something like that. So, yeah, I won't say that it has failed to root itself. It's just it needs some more time because people don't want to get out of their comfort zone because they always go for something which is much more accessible. Even now, in 2026, I still get to meet people who say that who have a vivid idea that okay, psychology is fine, they know what psychology is and everything, but they would still and go to an astrologer rather than going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist for something which is very evident that this is something related to mental health or something. So there are people.
Adding
So
on
yeah.
to what you said, I also actually I support your view in the sense that the first counselor of my knowledge in India, if I look back, was in that sacred chariot of Kurukshetra war, what Krishna was to
Yeah.
Arjun, right? Or in another religious context, it was Buddha. So maybe we sometimes do not need a quote unquote license to sit with someone and talk them out of their misery, and they can be
Exactly.
tailored. Yeah. So
Yeah, exactly.
mm, that takes me to my next question. Okay, that concepts like boundaries, individuation, and self-actualization carry a very Western assumptions about selfhood again, right? Do they survive contact with a
Hmm.
collectivist Indian family system, or do they need to be rewritten entirely? Like, can you explain this whole situation with an example, like, because you have talked about this in the prior answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you see, boundaries for me, according to a Western concept, is there is, according to me, it's separation. I mean, like my needs versus yours, my space versus yours. But in many Indian family systems, that framing is almost like a rejection. It's very aggressive. I mean, there's nothing your or mine, it's ours.
Mm,
But there is always some underlying need for that internal space, that personal space that is yours, for your emotional experience to be acknowledged without being immediately absorbed into the family narrative. And I think that's real and it's there. I mean, in my family as well, if I want to have my personal space, if I want to express something, or if I'm going through something, I want people to come and acknowledge, ki, okay, what happened? Tell me, what's wrong? I want people to give me that space. So this is there. I won't say that's not there. So you just cannot arrive with the Western word and expect it to land.
mm,
You work towards the same destination from a very different road. I mean, you might say, in an Indian context, I can say that how do you make sure your voice is still heard inside this family? I think for me, that's individuation. You just didn't call it that. So yeah.
mm. A generation is now arriving in therapy having been diagnosed by Instagram Reels, TikTok, medicated by Reddit, and therapeutically validated by Instagram. How has that changed what the first session looks like? Like, I have seen cases where the client comes in telling their symptoms as chief complaints, as carrying heavy diagnostical words. So, how does that shape your counseling room?
You see, I had a client of 17 years old, and she basically had anxiety, but I think she just got this thing from Instagram or something, and she came to me and she just said that, okay, I have ADHD, and she just started telling me all the symptoms of ADHD. Like, see, these are the symptoms of ADHD. I have this thing. This is how I behave in this particular situation. So she just started reciting, and I was like, okay, fine. Then we have to have some psychometric tests and everything. So she was diagnosed with anxiety, that too moderate level of anxiety. And when we went deeper into it, we got to know that she has performance anxiety because she was about to appear for her 12th board. So she was just having performance anxiety. And just to get away from that, she thought that if she starts taking therapy, her parents will, give her some time. And so for that, she has to have come to us with a problem, right? So what she thought was, she went into Instagram, I think, and everything. She just got some few symptoms and she came us with the problem of ADHD. Now, the first session usually used to involve with a lot of careful listening, as someone slowly, often reluctantly, found words for something they had never named. Now, she might walk in and come and say that I have ADHD, I have anxious attachment, I have this and this, and I think I'm on the spectrum. And they have done extensive self research. Okay, they're not wrong exactly, but they also, sometimes what happens with people like this is they do a lot of self research. They're not wrong exactly, but they are sometimes, they build an identity around the diagnosis before exploring what's underneath it. I mean, the question is that The first session shifts from what's happening for you to what is your life actually like. Okay, so levels, when they label these things, now that I have this problem, I have this problem, okay, this symptom seem similar to me, so I have this problem. See, labeling can be a gift because they reduce a kind of shame and they create a community for them. They can also become a way of narrating your pain without actually sitting inside it.
Yeah.
Both things are true simultaneously. So, yeah.
And Dipanjali ma'am, what do you think of AI apps, therapy apps, which are already being used in millions? Is that a public mental health breakthrough to make mental health accessible and cost friendly again to millions? Or um, are you calling that automating empathy and calling it care?
Automatic empathy and care.
Mm,
Both, actually,
mm,
if I'm being honest. Because for someone who has never had access to any kind of support, maybe a rural area or no money, enormous stigma, an app that responds at 2 a.m. without judgment is genuinely better than nothing. And I think that's real.
mm,
But there's something that happens in a real therapeutic relationship that I don't think can ever be replicated, which is the experience of being genuinely known by another person
mm,
who chose to show up, who got tired and came back again, who
mm,
sometimes got it all wrong and repaired it. That experience of being held in someone else's mind, that's not a feature you can build. That's what I feel. Because for a lot of people, that's exactly what they needed and never had. So that experience to be into someone else's mind, to be heard by someone else, to be understood by someone else, I don't think that can any AI or maybe any system can do it or any feature can do it because that has a warmth in it, that has a human touch in it, and I think that should never be replicated, or I don't think that can be replicated.
mm.
So, yeah.
In fact, there are growing concerns of data safety when it is coming to AI therapy apps, that uh, carbon
Yeah.
footsteps are being followed, right? And also,
Yeah.
there is this pattern of AI where it agrees to you. This mostly agrees to you.
Yeah.
So that type of coddling the person, I do not think that is the appropriate therapeutic setting. Sometimes the psychologist disagrees
Exactly.
with you to show you the right, better path. Okay.
Yeah.
The profession asks practitioners to hold immense pain daily, right? You're listening to so much pain every day. What
Yeah.
does no one tell you about about the psychological cost of being a counseling psychologist? Your own.
That's a great question. I mean, well, that it affects your body, not your head. Because we have always been said that your body remembers even if your mind forgets. So there's something that no one warns you about because you think the only risk can be burnout, too many clients, too much heaviness until you snap and everything. But what actually happens is very subtle. Like I remember I once had a very like a therapy session, and I took like around 4 clients a day, and that was too much for me because I was very young, but that matlab, very new. So 4 clients a day, and I was all gone. I was worn out, and I was going back home, and I had a plan to meet my friend. And what happened was, okay, that friend also happened to be Nishita, by the way. So so what happened was I met her, and I felt matlab, we were just having a normal casual discussion, and I think she cut me in between, and I reacted like something like the world was ending, and I
Mm,
just felt it just passed away. And then when I went home, and I just kept on thinking, and that created a lot of guilt in me for the next 2 days, even though I cleared it up with her. So, yeah. So the other thing that nobody tells you about, that some clients will change your relationship to your own life in
mm,
ways that are very hard to name. That happens not always in bad ways too, because when you sit across a 45-year-old men who spend their entire life doing nothing, doing what was expected, and who is only now grieving that. That gives you a different outlook of how you look at your own choices. Because that makes you, think when you go home and look at your own choices very differently. And I think it's not neutral either and also not contaminated either, if it makes sense.
Hmm. Completely makes sense. In fact, patients, clients, they uh, go through counter transference, right? But at the
Yeah.
opposite side of the table, sometimes psychologists too, they mirrored their own unresolved issues with whatever the client is talking about. So I understand the
Yeah.
problem, but what do you do to get out of it? Get out of the head of the other person and get back inside your own.
See, there's a thing which no one tells you about. You just figure it out yourself. I mean, once you will also start, when you'll start practicing, if you do it, you will also, understand that you, as a therapist, you have a lot of unresolved material within yourself. And in that therapeutic room, where you have a chair, and that chair is supposed to be the client's, and that session is the client's room, and your unresolved material does not get a chair. And this is what I have learned. Because when you notice something, you don't act on it, you take it to supervision, you just become uncomfortable with the part of just noticing it. Because when you notice something which is very similar to what has happened with the client, it is very similar to what has also happened to you, it means you're noticing it but you're not acting on it. So it
Acting.
means like you are somewhere pushing towards a particular interpretation,
Mm,
towards wanting the client to make a specific choice, or maybe toward over identifying with their conflict.
mm,
I'll give you an example. I once had a client who was deciding whether to leave a career his family had essentially built for him. Now, I knew exactly how that felt because I I come from a family where everyone is into corporate, and they have a very good like references and everything. And I, honestly, if I ever went to corporate or something like that, I would have had a very good and very like comfortable life. So I could connect with him. So I knew exactly how that felt. But what I had to watch carefully was whether I was helping him find his own answer, or whether I was just angling him for the answer I would needed permission to hear at his age. So that's the internal work. That's what none of the institutions, that's what none of your teachers tell you or taught teaches you. It's just something you will learn in the process, that your unresolved material, no matter how connection you, whatever connection you feel with your patients, or whatever, how much you feel connected with it, those materials do not get a chair. Those materials do not get or a place to, you know, get noticed in front of your client. So yeah.
that was a great answer actually. And I also learned something that we learn every day in this field. We never get it
Yeah.
all in one day. Maybe the day after graduation, we'd not know it all. We learn it through years of practice and dedication and research in this field. So thank you, Dipanjali Di. That
Sure.
was the end of our interview. Thank you for joining with us. And I had a pretty insightful session. In fact, out of Shohojatri, me as Tista, I learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much.
So thank you to you as well for having me. I enjoyed a lot. The questions were incredible actually. So it's really good. And yes, you made a very good valid point that we keep on learning on this field, even though it's just a never ending path, I would say, because there's so much to learn, so much to gather. Because since we work with humans, so and everybody is different, so you just learn every day with sitting with different people. You learn their mindsets, you learn how they cope, how they deal with their conflicts. So yeah, it indeed a very interesting field. And I'm just hope that we get more and more young psychologists like you guys to work in the field
Yes.
and make a difference.